Chapter 8. Wallace on Fire. John Wallace's words hit me like a sledgehammer. I gripped the steering wheel tighter with my left hand, but I dared not allow him to notice. I had to keep my cool until I determined where Wallace was going with this. Did he know of my meeting with Turner? Or did he only suspect something and he was now fishing for information? Maybe he was trying to read my reaction at this very second. At first, I wasn't sure how to respond. Then, as the reality of what he was saying and how he said it sank in, I began to get mad. Wallace had grown used to the local sheriff Hardy Collier doing what he was told. I wasn't Hardy Collier. Well, Mr. Wallace, I'm not really in the business of running people out of the state. I'm more in the business of arresting them when I catch them making moonshine. We'll do that then. Wallace was already starting to raise his voice. Arrest him, 'cause I can tell you he's making liquor on my land. I can show you where. I'll take you and show you his operation. I told him to stop it. I told him I already spent time at the tower up in Atlanta for making liquor, and I ain't going back for a crime he's committing. I could feel the hostility coming from Wallace. He wasn't just fishing for information. There was something more here. Something that ran deep. I should have explored that, but right now I was angry because Wallace assumed I'd do his bidding. What is it you think I do for a living, John? I asked. I knew Turner was making liquor before I ever got your note. But I don't arrest people on your orders. I arrest them when I can make a liquor case against them. In the darkness, I heard Wallace take in a deep, rapid breath. His huge fist balled up tight in the seat next to me, and he raised it a few inches. I could feel him shaking as he struggled to bring his own temper under control. I'm telling you, I want something done with him, he shouted, his voice thick with rage. I want him off my land, and I want him out of the state. Wallace may have been trying to get a lid on his temper, but it was already too late for me. I wheeled in the seat to face him. Wallace, I'd rather you not get me all the way up here to Stovall at midnight to tell me lies. I don't believe your story, I said. Turner's making moonshine, all right, and he's making it under your direction. I'm not interested in seeing some two-bit still he has on the side. I'm interested in finding the large still that I believe he is working on your behalf. When I find that still, you won't have to worry about Turner being on your land anymore, 'cause he'll be at the state penitentiary in Reedsville instead, and you'll be bunking right next door to him. The car went silent. I'd pushed too hard, and I knew it. But the arrogance of Wallace was more than I could take. I turned back to look out the windshield. I carefully placed my right hand across my lap and onto the handle of the sap. Wallace stared out the passenger window for a long time. Then another. Finally, he turned to me again. His countenance had changed. His jaw set firm, and I could tell he was gritting his teeth. He fidgeted in his seat. Well, if you don't get him out of here, then I can promise you I will kill him, Wallace said. Though we'd spoken many times, I'd never heard his voice sound as it did in that moment. He sounded the way I imagined the serpent might have sounded in the garden when he spoke to Eve. You do realize you're talking to an officer of the law, don't you, John? I asked. Wallace didn't seem to hear. He was fixated. He went on. I saw him last week fishing in my lake. Turner was a sharecropper in Wallace's farm. That's how he came to be hired to work Wallace's still. I watched him for a while from up at my barn. Finally, I decided to put my pistol in my pocket and drive down there. By the time I pulled in, I determined I would just shoot him in the head and be done with it. Wasn't going to say nothing or get any argument about it. I was just going to step up to him and shoot him in the head. A chill went up my spine. But when I got down there and got out of the truck, I saw he had his little boy with him there. He was holding a little homemade cane pole, that little boy was. I already had my hand in my pocket, was about to cock the hammer, but I just opened my hand, let the pistol slide back down into my pocket. I didn't want to do it in front of the boy like that. Just didn't have the heart. I sat there for a moment, sort of stunned. I'd heard stories. I'd heard that Walker had already killed other men, but to hear him describe his earlier attempt on Turner so matter-of-factly was shocking, to say the least. Then again, I knew Wallace was a bad one. That was the reason I was so hot on finding his still. That was the reason I went to Turner's Still alone the other night. Wallace had to be stopped. I could feel Wallace staring at me as I looked straight ahead. Finally, I turned toward him and held his stare, unsure of what to say next. Suddenly, I noticed that Wallace's right hand, the one opposite me, was in his pocket. I sensed that he was gripping that same pistol he just described to me. I couldn't possibly draw my Smith in these tight quarters, so I gripped the handle of the sap tighter, ready to swing in the arc onto the bridge of Wallace's nose in a split second if need be. Eventually, Wallace looked back out the side window. He took in a deep, ragged breath, then let it out slowly. "You're a good man, Miller, and I believe you to be a fine officer. I hope you take care of Turner soon." Without another word, he jerked the door open, slammed it shut, and walked off into the darkness.